How's it going, guys? Got a couple of projects. Wee. Here's the quicker one. Well, the project isn't the quicker one, but got to do some spackling. Anybody that's ever done real spackling knows the value of a good blade. A broken in blade. Yeah, Junior had these packed away for me. So, okay, we'll get past that. Project. We have to thank Glenn again for this. Okay, it's finally going to get used. Okay, so what do we have? We have a couple of trays, some spreaders, some fiberglass mat, some resin, some filler. I know I have other filler and better filler, but I was at the store. I figured, let me just get it just in case. It'll be fine for what we're doing, trust me. We got some Sim texture coating. Not sure about this, never used it before. It is not like rocket shorts or anything like that. This is actually made for bumpers, to put that tiny little speckle finish on the bumpers and dashboards and whatever. We're gonna try it. And some thin and thick cheap brushes. And that's pretty much all we need. This right here, I took a dot of it out, not he put that dot there, but I took a dot of it out and laid it on the steering wheel. And it is almost dead on to that steering wheel. Close enough. Because the interior Junior's car is obviously berry is the color. Okay? And since things come from everywhere, they're all different shades of red as it is from the factory. And the steering column's like a satin. The side panels are what I consider, I'm going to call them medium gloss, because you have three choices. Low gloss, okay, which I would assume low gloss would be like the steering column, where it's not like white flat, there is a slight something to it. Then medium gloss, and then high gloss would be, you know, a sheen, total sheen, smooth as glass, you know, like an outside paint job. And got the tree going. It's last day. Today's New Year's Day. Happy New Year's. So what do we got to do with this? I've actually been rolling this around in my head for the past week. We're all working on Junior's car. I am working on the inside of Junior's car, which includes the gas pedal and a bunch of other things. And the reason I'm jumping to this is I got to hand this piece to Junior because I want him to do the paint on it. I really don't have anywhere to paint it. So I figured let me get it done, and then it'll sit there, and then if there's any issues, we can figure it out. In the 78 Concord wagon only, or 77 to, I think 71 is the first year of a Sportabout. 70 is the first year of a Hornet, but I don't think the wagon came out to the following year. I could be wrong. Doesn't really matter. But from the initial Sportabout to the first year of the Concord only, okay, it had the hump in the rear, and you had the Space Saver collapsed tire. It was only like this thick, like in the AMX, and I think Mopar used them. I think a bunch of people used them. In 79, they took away that hump. The rear plastic panel is shaped totally different, and the carpet goes over. So a while back, we went and we got those drip rail moldings and one of the moldings for the wheel well. And I grabbed that panel from the guy. It was the same color, so I thought. It was a different shade, but that doesn't really matter. So I got the complete panel. It starts from the side of the passenger seat all the way down by the floor, or the rear seat by the floor, does the whole wheel and goes all the way to the back by the taillight. And it's complete. And it doesn't have the opening anymore to put that thing there. So I figured to go that way. Then I realized, what do you do with the section of carpet that's missing? Which is longer than this, but probably the width of this. So what do you do with that when you're looking in on it? You know, back then, he was going to put the nitrous bottle there. To cut something out nice, we put like a nice black pan underneath. It would look nice. It would look all stitched around it. But the nitrous bottle's not going in the car. There's no reason to put it there. So the top of his panel started to get, all the panels in the car are mint in this car. But the top of that panel, from being in the sun, started to get that chalkiness to it. Started getting real brittle on the top, if you guys know what I mean. Just in a little section about this big. The rest of it was all solid. And I took a red fender cover and put it over it. Tightened up the wing nut, and that's the way I left it for 17 years. That's when you guys see the back of the car in that video. the doors open. It was all, the trunk was all full of stuff and body dust. I never got it to clean it out. And that piece is wrapped into the side. Since then, that whole trunk is 100% cleaned out. There's nothing in it. That spare tire is all gone. Everything's gone. 100% cleaned out. It hasn't been wiped down, but it's cleaned out. So now what I want to do is I want to do a repair on the top of that panel and strengthen it. So I want to do the inside and down the front, even though there's no damage to it on that panel. And I'd like to do it, and while it's wet, put it on the car, tighten the wing nut, let it sit and harden. So it'll be at that shape. In case it has to flex up and down a little bit, I really don't remember. Then after we do that, we'll do a couple of layers of fiberglass. I mean, that'll be strong enough to punch. We're gonna come on the outside. I'll remove what I have to remove, and there'll be a fiberglass backing. I will fill it, and I will texture it. I've also seen how you actually texture putty, if you want to call it like that, like if you were fixing a dashboard or whatever. I watched a video on that. It was pretty interesting, but I think I got too big of a section, and it might look goofy. If there was just like a crack in it, to put the pad in across would be pretty cool to do. I'm going to try it, but I don't think that's going to work. So with that, we're never going to get that exact, you know, the grain. It's the long, thin stuff. It's supposed to simulate 70s plastic. So that's why I picked up this, because I figured even with this, given the little slight texture appearance, since, I mean, in reality, the side panel doesn't go over the top by the window. That's smooth. Then you got a panel that comes down and goes on the wheel well. Then the carpet. It's all different panels, and they're all different textures. I figured we'd be better off having this, even with this texture that it has, than a damaged piece in there. Never gonna find one. I looked in the beginning. These things are all toast. If the car's southern, it melted 25 years ago, 30 years ago. If the car's northern, it's broken in pieces. They're just non-existent. So the only way to do it is, see, I'm thankful I got 98% of it to work with. So I'm not building a structure. I'm just repairing, basically, a washed out section in the center instead of like an old, I'm going to use GM, but I've seen other cars do it, where the whole panel turns like dust. We're not quite at that, and nowhere near it. So we're going to do it. We're going to play around. If I get it the way I want to, the way I'm hoping, I'm going to have Junior spray it. And like I said, it only has to be within a shade or two, because everything else is a different shade. The seat isn't the same shade as the side. The molded plastic isn't the same as the painted piece above. It's all different sheens of this, what I think is a pretty cool, it's not burgundy, because whatever berry is. You know, it's definitely not a cherry red either. It's dark. So, and this is a full can, and like I said, this was sent to me actually to do a steering wheel, but I think it's going to go towards this project at this point. But at least I have everything here. Like, for argument's sake, if this isn't enough, even if you got, say, 2 coats on there and they needed 3, this would be a nice base coat, because if the next one comes in, it's a slightly different shade, doesn't really matter. At least you got a base on there. So, so that's what's going on. This, I'm actually going to be working on in about 3 hours. I'm going to start one little spot. Then we have to reconstruct a corner of a room. And boy, does that just sound like a corner of a room. Like that. Not even close. Not even by the wildest stretch of your imagination is it going to be as easy as that. Okay? Because the house has an extension out the back of, like, I don't know, 20 feet, 25 feet at least. And the ceiling comes up cathedral, but the shape of the ceiling is W-shaped. And when that W intersects with the wall, the house developed a roof leak. The roof leak is long fixed. The roof leak's been fixed for a year. But it obviously did damage to the rock. Where that comes down in the W, where it meets the wall, where it meets the back, where it meets everything. So, and from what I could tell by looking at it is, where they did the W, they took corner bead and just opened it up because it wasn't a 90 anymore, and that's what they used down there. So if that's the case, which it is the case, we're going to be working on either side of that corner bead up the wall. The molding has to come off around the French doors, and unlike bodywork, it can be this thick of joint compound in reality. You will be piecing it, and there'll be gaps in between, and you'll really fill in between, and that joint compound will actually act like a glue and bond them together. So the goal is, when it's done, to be as undetectable as possible. Yeah, so, but I can only make the line just straight as the last person made them. That's all. I'm going to leave the comment like that. There's only so much you could do because I can't change the shape of the framing. So, I just have a quick wall to spackle today, and we're actually going to dive into that next weekend, because what is going on, I don't think I posted on Facebook. I did. I posted on Facebook, on YouTube, not Facebook, with the thing with Junior's timing belt. That car is sitting there, running. Just click the key and run it. We already ran it for 15 minutes. There's nothing wrong with the car. He did a leak down test on it before we even took the car apart to make sure it was good. It's actually pretty good. They got a thing around the crank pulley, around the crank gear. And when the belt snaps, I guess it snaps in the same place every time. It walks it around, and it curls in there, and it acts like a brake. Okay, are the interference motors? Yes. Do they usually puke the valves? Yes. And is it usually the rear head? Yes. And I learned why. So if this is the crank, okay, there's the rear head, there's the front head. It actually comes off here, goes around the tensioner, around the rear gear, down below the water pump, front, another gear, and then down to the bottom. Or idlums, they keep saying gears. It broke right here. And the reason I know that is, when we took the engine apart, if this is the front cam, the brake was right here. So that means the belt snapped, started to feed itself, and was still going through like a film projector, turning the front thing. It never made it past there for this to even stop. So this was always in time with this, or very close. I'm sure as it wedged it in its thing, it changed a couple of degrees. But that just tells me the rear cam stopped at one point. But this thing was wrapped around so many times. It wrapped itself around, then it changed direction and continued to wrap itself around. So it wasn't always the same direction. The gear was going the same direction, but the belt couldn't go no more, so the belt folded back the other way, instead of wrapping between it, and wedged itself in there and acted like a brake. And this motor was locked solid. You could not move. Could not move with a breaker bar, either way. So that's when all 6 plugs were pulled out, because you knew the lower end wasn't going to move. Pulled out all 6 plugs, started, so you do it slow. You put the cam into whatever cylinder you're working on, and all the valves are shut. Okay, you don't whale it, because you can still make contact. And trust me, pulling a wrench and making that kind of contact can bend the valve. I've seen it happen at Mitsu. Did all 6 cylinders. Okay, and all 6 cylinders were like above the 95% range. All you heard was the slight little into the crankcase. That was it, which is normal. It's got to go past the rings. Especially on a cold engine. So we were good. Nothing exhaust, nothing intake. So we knew we were good to go. The only thing is if this is the gear and this is the belt, in front of it you got the little washer. And it has a little bevel at the end on it, a little bend, and all holes drilled in it. That's because as the gear comes around and the belt comes around, the air has to leave. So the air blows out the back and blows out the front. That's what the holes are for. So the air can escape, so you don't get the blower whine. Okay, but when it jammed all in there, it just bent it just a hair. About this much of it. And I said to Junior, I said, listen, I'll straighten that. But this isn't a clunker. This is a mint car. I said, we're getting a new part. And we're getting a new brake from around the bottom. It got deformed. And I was able to actually sit there and metal work it back to where it belonged. But I think both parts were under $20. But the problem was, we couldn't get the parts for that night, and they're not going to be here till Tuesday. Today is Saturday. So we put the whole car together, or we put it together with no covers on it, harmonic balance of the whole deal, buying the car right up. It was like mint. So now we got to go. I'm not going to say back in the second time, because all you got to do is take the harmonic balancer off. We have to switch that tin plate, the deflector. In a timing chain mode, it would be an oil slinger, but it just obviously isn't an oil slinger. We have to change that and the tensioner, because we can't tell if the tensioner we bought is a fake also, so we're assuming it is. So every pulley that we put inside the motor as part of the kit has been replaced, except when he left, he thought they gave him the tensioner, but they forgot to. So on Tuesday, you'll get the tensioner, which is nice. We don't take nothing back apart. You take the tensioner. We actually do the lower piece first, so the belt can't drop. You do the tensioner and that front plate. Put the whole car back together, and he's back on the road. So, okay, guys, that was a very long video, but I just figured I'd let you guys know what's happening around here. And I would have started on this earlier. I thought all the stores were closed today, but they're not. So I just got back with all this. And it's, I don't know. It's dark out. So it's got to be 5:30, give or take. With that, Happy New Year. We'll be making videos. I don't know how to edit 2 videos together. I have no clue in the world. If anybody wants to tell me, I can barely leave you guys comments. That's it. I'm out of here.